Let's go for it. Should we just explain as well that we're going to be doing this to some farmers? How do you know these farmers?
I just shop at the farm.
Oh, all right. So it is actually like your local farm. It's
It's my
close to
local
you.
farm, yeah. And
That's
there's
so
there's
cool.
there's other kind of, by the sounds of it, there's quite a few people
Funny
coming
enough, I was literally just listening to that Simon Dixon,
with Peter McCormack.
Jack Cruz. No, this one.
Oh, the Jack Cruz one, yeah, I watched that one as
What's
well,
it
yeah.
called? So, and just literally the bit I was just listening to was like, this is how you can vote, basically. It's not
Yeah.
through like politicians, it's by building a local
So it's
community.
boycotting
But yeah, it's literally voting with your money.
with
So
your
like
money, yeah.
if you can actually buy food. I mean, I've said this so many times recently, actually. Like, if you can find somewhere to buy food with Bitcoin,
Yeah.
you are very, very close to living on a Bitcoin standard. Because other than shelter and clothing, there's nothing else you really need each month. Water, I guess, depending on where you are. Like obviously in the UK, you can just run the tap, but will you always be able to run the tap? That's like other blackpilling doomsday theory stuff. But yeah, I think that food is the main thing, isn't it? Like, you know, if you can find a way that you can buy food with
Yeah, well,
Bitcoin.
this was my issue during lockdown, where I searched for this farm because the supermarkets were just too. It was like an episode of Black Mirror. You
Yeah.
know, I remember I went to the supermarket with my mum, and she at the time was like 67 years old, and then I wasn't allowed to go in with her to help her with her shopping. You know, it was the whole thing was just the craziest thing. But don't get me started on COVID. So I was like, right, fuck supermarket. Oh, I probably shouldn't say fuck on YouTube, because I think I think swearing is a thing on YouTube. So I was
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, right, forget supermarkets.
Yeah,
I'll try and find an alternative.
my wife's mum still goes shopping for a little old lady that lives close to her
Yeah,
since COVID. She's done it
really.
every week since COVID, yeah. Because exactly what you just said, she couldn't go in with someone.
Yeah,
And so there was like, Sarah, like my wife's mum used to just go, found a few people that needed food shopping. She loves food shopping. So she,
that's a good thing to do. Yeah.
yeah, she just does it out of like the goodness of her heart. It's not like no benefit to her, but she's retired and she's, yeah, like I say, she loves food shopping. So
Yeah, definitely thinking at the time that there'd be like a new black market job of, let's say, the unvaxxed were like ostracized from society and they weren't allowed to shop or do anything like that. There'd be a black market job opening where the vaccinated were doing the jobs for the unvaccinated and charging them like a little,
that's true.
subsidy. Like there would be an underground black market thing. But anyway, we're doing a presentation for these local farmers purely because they've asked us to, basically. Whenever I go into this farm shop, there's always loads of people asking, so what exactly is Bitcoin? They might have seen my YouTube channel or whatever. So what is it? And it's like, well, it's going to take a while to explain. So basically, we just said, let's do a presentation and we'll see what happens. So this is a Bitcoin 101 presentation for this group of farmers down in my village who have asked for it, and we're going to go through it. That's it, isn't it?
Let's do it.
Can you see it on the screen?
Yep.
Cool. Right then, so objectives of the presentation. Now, before we start, this is not financial advice. We are not going to be telling you to buy Bitcoin. We're not going to be telling you what to do with your money, anything like that. We're not going to tell you to put all of your pension and your life savings into Bitcoin, even though that's what I've done. We're not going to be telling you. We're not going to be
And what
telling
I
you.
would highly recommend. Don't say
We're
that.
not going to be telling you to sell your house and put that money into Bitcoin, which is what Mike's done. We're basically going to be informing you what Bitcoin is, because that's what most people say. What actually is Bitcoin? What is it? It's up to you what you do. But we're just going to inform you what it is. Who are we? Well, we're not financial advisors. We're not bankers. We're just nerds that have read a lot of books and done our own research over the past few years. That's it. Bitcoin is a solution to a problem. That's how we both see it. So you probably won't understand the solution, which is Bitcoin, until you understand the problem. And the problem is with our current money that we use, which is the pound, the euro, the dollar, etc. And the presentation is going to be in 3 parts. The first part is going to be what the problem is. Second part, we're going to go into what makes a good currency, what constitutes a sound money. And the third part is how Bitcoin offers a solution. Now, a few questions before we start, just to see where the audience are at. Quick show of hands. Now, obviously, there will be hands there, hopefully. Who feels like they're working harder but getting poorer? That's your first question. Who thinks, there's Mike, yeah, one. Who thinks there's something wrong with the monetary system but doesn't know what? There's a couple more. Who does know what? That would just be Mike. Who owns any Bitcoin? There will be a few Bitcoiners going, actually, who I know by the sounds of it. There's a couple of young lads going.
Nice.
Who thinks Bitcoin is just a scam or a get-rich-quick scheme? And who understands how Bitcoin works? That's just to gauge the audience there. Okay, we're going to be presenting the Bitcoin 101 via memes. So prepare yourself for lots of internet memes today. Now, before we start, this is a common idea of Bitcoin owners. So here is what my friends think I do, gambling in the casino. What my mum thinks I do, some genius matrix code reader. What society thinks I do which is playing with fake magic internet money. What politicians think I do, which is some kind of underground cyberpunk dissident. What I think I do, genius trader. But in reality, what I actually do is just being a nerd sat in front of the computer like this dude here. And if you want proof, here's your proof. There's me. As a nerd sat in front of the computer, probably about 2009, actually, when Bitcoin first came out. So that would have been the computer where I first heard about it. Anyway, part 1 of the presentation. What is the problem? Now, the problem is our current money, which is commonly called fiat money. So what is fiat money? Fiat is currency that has value because a government declares it legal tender, not because it's backed by a physical commodity like gold or silver, as it was before 1971. So the pound, the euro, the dollar, etc., these are all fiat currencies. We've got a little video here. Now, this is 1971, President Richard Nixon declaring...
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
So that was a clip of Richard Nixon in 1971 declaring that the dollar is no longer exchangeable for gold. It's no longer redeemable. Those IOU notes, which were 1-to-1 backed, $1, $1 worth of gold, that link was severed. So since 1971, the global reserve currency, which is the dollar, has been backed by nothing apart from power and war. So fiat money, it's issued by governments or central banks. Its value comes from trust and confidence that people have in the issuing authority. The paper or digital form itself is worthless without the system of trust backing it, because, here's your second meme, money printer go brrr. They can just print as much money as they want, whenever they want, at will. So, question for the audience. On the night, Mike, if if you want to break it up a bit, you can do the questions to the audience, so up to you. But this question is, when you go into a bank and take a loan out, it could be a normal loan, could be a mortgage loan. When you sign your name on that paper and you get, say, 150,000 quid, who here thinks that that money comes from the vault. The banker then walks into the vault and they've got 150,000 in the bank, and then they transfer that into your account and you've got that money from the bank vault. Who here thinks that's what happens? Probably most people. When in reality, that signature creates fresh, new money, credit. Your account is credited with fresh money out of thin air. A bank has got a banking license and they can just create credit out of thin air. So your signature, that loan, is new money entering the system. If you don't believe me, here is from the Bank of England website telling us how money is created. So, quote, most of the money in the economy is created not by printing presses at a central bank, but by banks when they provide loans. So it's just numbers on a screen. So issues with fiat currency, there's no effort required. There's a single centralized issuer, central bank, that can create money at will, out of thin air, backed by trust and government decree. Quote, is from the Bank of England. When a bank makes a loan to one of its customers, it simply credits the customer's account with a higher deposit balance. At that instant, new money is created. So a bank can just create money out of thin air. More issues, it's prone to corruption and mismanagement. For example, the 2008 financial crisis, failing banks were bailed out with newly created money, and the public lost through inflation. So when the banks committed fraud, they made a mistake, new money was created to bail them out. And when new money was created, we suffered the losses basically through inflation. The money supply grows constantly with no fixed limit, silently eroding the value of your savings and income. So if you think of all new money going into the economy, then if you see it as it being a dilution of the current existing currency, the value of your savings, which you've worked for up until that point, has just been devalued. It's been diluted even more so. So the value goes down. So even though the number stays the same, the value of what you've got decreases. So it's a silent, covert tax, basically. This is what money printing is. It's a nefarious, sneaky tax. How does inflation affect us? My parents in their 30s. This would make a lovely second home for a family to winter in. Hopefully the garage can fit both our cars, snowmobile, ski equipment. Me in my 30s, struggling to buy a loaf of bread. So my granddad was a builder, just a kind of standard average job. And he managed to support his wife and 3 kids on a builder's wage in whenever that was, 60s. My mum and dad both had to work and they supported the family, 2 kids with that. Now you can have both parents working and full-time and both barely making ends meet. This is not a phenomenon which is unique to my family. This is everybody's noticing it. And now you've got Gen Z coming up who are thinking there's no way ever I'm going to be able to afford a house because it's impossible. So here's a graph from the Office of National Statistics talking about inflation as a hidden tax. This is the purchasing power of the pound based on the RPI. What was RPI again, Mike? It was
it's retail price index.
Retail price index. So basically like an average cost of a basket of goods to retail purchases, which is just the average Joe, basically. So this is purchasing power. If you look at 2015, this is at probably about 70. And then, in fact, you explain this. You're better at charts than me, Mike. Unmute, bro.
Yeah, no, I think it's gone down 6 times. So your purchasing power has gone from roughly 600 to 100, and that's only to 2015 as well. Like that's when they stopped reporting this data. And obviously we've been through COVID, and everyone knows what inflation has been like in the last few years. Is it worth us putting in a chart of M2 money supply here? I just thought, because that really shows, or is that going to be too much?
Can do. We could just say that, Well, we get to actually put, there's the charts of amount of money in the circulation versus purchasing power. We'll just say this is purchasing power. So this is what your pound can actually buy. So in 1975, compared to today, that £1 was worth 6 times as much. So if you wonder why, the house prices are going up or everything is going up, it's because your pound, even though it's the same coin, it's the same coin that was been in circulation since 1975. The value has decreased 6 times. So it's worth 6 times as less due to this money printing inflation. So here's a chart. Again, this is from data source Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. This is directly from a bank. Purchasing power of $100 since 1913. So the US dollar has lost nearly 97% of its purchasing power since the Federal Reserve was founded in 1913. Purchasing power of $100 since the year 2000. So in the last 25 years, it's lost 50%, 45% of its purchasing power since the year 2000. So if you had 10 grand in the bank into the year 2000, that 10 grand is now going to buy you 45% less than what it did then. Here is a chart of currency in circulation versus purchasing power. So as you can see, the more money that goes in and gets printed, the purchasing power just decreases and decreases. Now the issue is we've got no say in the amount of money that's printed. It's not a democratic thing. There's a group of bankers that decide, oh, we're going to print more money. That's it. We haven't got a say in it at all. And every time they do, our purchasing power gets robbed from us. This is the issue. Okay. This is the dollar. This is the pound. Exactly the same thing. So since 1971, if we're saying that is 100, we're at now about what, 6%. So it's down 94% in 50 odd years. Like
well, again, look at where this only goes for what, 2011.
Yeah. So it'll be even less. It'll be even less.
15 years of data here.
And a hell of a lot more money was printed during COVID. So this will be even less than now, So 1971, this is when probably my mum and dad were looking at buying a house,
I do think it's worth putting in the M2 money supply because it can.
Yeah, we can pop that in. Yeah,
it just shows you like the data that's missing because some of these obviously are missing. Missing 15 years doesn't even do it justice. Let me just see if I can get one up. You keep going and I'll show it.
I'll keep going. Yeah. Here's Canadian dollar, exactly the same thing. Aussie dollar. Every currency that has a central bank, it's exactly the same story. Exactly the same story. Average house price in the UK, skyrocket. Home killed rump steak per kilo, 1971, it was like £1 per kilo. Now it's 20 odd quid. It's not because steak is getting harder to find, harder to create. Eggs are not getting harder to manufacture, but the value of the currency that we buy them with is being devalued. That's the issue. So consumer price index, now this is over the last 500 odd years. So CPI, this is how much the average cost of goods would cost. So basically from 1694, which I think is when the Bank of England came into effect, was around this time, 1694. But they had a gold standard, so it was backed by a hard currency such as gold. And you can see there's a few blips here. World War One, World War Two, 1971, when the dollar, the global reserve currency, was decoupled from gold, it just blew up. So prices just went through the roof. And this is 15 years old as it is, so it's going to be even higher than this now. CPI manipulation tricks. So
hang on. I've just added a slide there. Maybe you have to go out and go back in. Hopefully it shows. There you go, that one.
Ah, yes. Hang on, where's this?
It's probably better if we put it in a little bit earlier. I'll figure out. But
so what's this one then?
So this is just showing the M2 money stock, which is kind of like the best data we have now for the money supply. Funny enough, they actually removed the M3 around 2006, which includes all of the money supply. So now they don't show all of it conveniently, but this is the best thing we have to go on. And as you can see from COVID,
So is this total fiat?
This is M2 is basically like the total money supply in the US, I believe.
Okay.
I'll find out the definition, or you can quickly Google it or whatever. But like, it's just basically, it's the money. So in 2020, it was at 16 trillion, and then it's gone up 6 trillion in 2 years, which is about a third, more than a third, probably about pushing 40% of the total money supply was created in 2 years. Obviously, there was a bit of a tapering off, but now we're now back above that. So all of those charts that we've just seen, 40% of the money was created in the last 5 years. That isn't even included in a lot of those charts. So it's like very, very much worse than what it is. I don't know, did you find a definition for it?
It's just total liquid currency in an economy. So basically total money supply.
Yeah, so
how much is sloshing around.
Obviously, I don't think anyone really needs to know that. You can just say the money supply, but M1 is physical currency plus checking, and then M2 is including cash. So it's the savings deposits, money market accounts, small time.
It might even be worth putting in like a one of the K-shaped economy charts, so you can say like, now somebody that's trained properly in economics would say, well, inflation is fine because as long as the wages keep up with it, then you're good. As long as the GDP keeps up with it, then it's fine. It's normal. When in actual fact, we know it's not keeping up with it because, I know personally that eggs since COVID have doubled. They used to be 120 for 6. Now you're going to Tesco's 240 for 6. So, real world inflation is that, and everybody's noticing it. The average Joe even is noticing it, right? But the wages aren't going up. Wages are going up a couple of percent. So it's out of control, basically. And there are ways to manipulate the things as well, which we get to. Should we add that chart in as well? The K-shaped, whatever that would be.
I think, is that like as in, oh, right, yeah. I was in like recovering industries is technology, retail, software, whereas industries needing assistance. Is that, oh, you can't see what I'm showing.
No, just as in like the rich get richer.
Oh, okay. So that Jack Mahler's chart that's coming up, that actually shows that. Remember the 95% compared to the 20%. That of shows it.
Cool. So there we go. And then in terms of inflation as well, as I've just said with eggs, there are ways in which inflation is hidden from us. So, there's a few posh words here, but shrinkflation is one. So the price of the good might stay the same, but the weight of the product you're getting is less. So bags of crisps, for example, price might stay the same, but they used to be 60 grams, then they were 50, now they're 40. So the product itself is getting less. Or quality of the good. So, you used to might have got some kind of ready meal or whatever, which was made with lard or butter. Well, the price might stay the same, but the quality of the product has gotten less because they're replacing it with rapeseed oil or some other kind of toxic garbage. So there are ways in which this CPI data can be manipulated to say, yeah, guys, don't worry, the economy is fine. When in actual fact, we know that the food we're eating is getting less good. Like the food is getting crapper. The portions of everything are getting smaller. Imagine the last thing where it's like, hang on, this used to be massive. A chocolate bar. This used to be massive. Now it's like some miniature tiny thing, and then there is substitution effect, which is basically people leaning towards the cheaper alternatives. So the basket of goods which they might buy, it might stay the same price, but it's because they can't afford steak anymore. So they've gone for, chicken nuggets or Rustler's burger. They've gone for the Rustler's burger instead of the ribeye steak. And other things as well, but you get the idea. Everybody is aware of this shitification of things. Is down to the fact that the money is becoming worthless. Okay, so at this point, I'll probably ask, I'm like, all right, is everybody still with me, or have I lost everybody? It's like when I used to work at Centre Parks, you're dealing with kids, you're like, are you still with me? Let me see a thumbs up. Let me see a thumbs up in the air if you're still with me. So inflation acts like a stealth tax. Even if your money isn't taken directly, its value and its purchasing power shrinks. So as more money is printed, more money goes into the economy, it dilutes the rest of the currency. So even if you got money sat in the bank or cash sat in a shoebox under the bed, the value of that has just been diluted. It's been devalued. It's been debased, basically. More money in circulation leads to an inflation of the money supply, which leads to prices of the goods going up. It's not the value of the good going up, it's the value of your money going down, i.e. you need to spend more to get the same amount of goods. Inflation also incentivizes consumption and debt, undermining long-term saving and planning, i.e. why would I save money for tomorrow? Because my money's going to be worth less tomorrow than it is today, so I might as well just spend it. More issues with fiat currency. Governments and banks can freeze accounts, block transactions, or seize funds, e.g. political distance, protest, sanctions, whatever. You said something dodgy on Facebook, whatever. That power is there to be used. Here's an example. A few years ago, Canada takes steps to freeze anti-vax protesters' bank accounts. This was the truck drivers in Canada didn't want the vax because when they were having to travel between the border of America and Canada, so they protested. People were donating to them via PayPal and banks and whatnot, and they all got closed down. They got debanked, basically. So that's an issue. Even more issues. Too big to fail institutions are bailed out. The profits are privatized, i.e. the bankers still get their bonuses, but the losses are socialized. What does that mean? It means more money was printed, 2008 financial crisis. So, as we've just explained, when loads of more money is printed, we get the brunt through this secret, covert, inflationary debasement of our currency. We take the brunt of the hit. CBDCs, which are on the horizon, enable direct government surveillance and control of all of your spending. International transfers are slow, expensive, and controlled by intermediaries. Those closest to the money printer benefit first, which is called the Cantillon effect. Banks get cheap credit, or even those close to the banks, while the savers lose purchasing power. So if you're a member of the club, if you're on the Epstein list, you probably got those nice 0% loans. You can take advantage of it. But me and Mike can't, unfortunately. Many countries restrict moving money abroad, trapping wealth within borders, or even disallow you from withdrawing your own money, which sounds crazy, but this happened just a couple of years ago in Lebanon. So Lebanon was facing hyperinflation, and people were just trying to get their own money out of the banks, but the banks didn't have it. They were saying no. So there was this lady, and there was also another dude who, I think he had 50,000 quid in the bank, or 50,000 Lebanese dollars in the bank. And he went in there with an AK-47 just to rob the bank of his own cash, which they wouldn't give him. So there's this third-party trust which we're reliant upon when dealing with fiat currencies, which can easily be exploited not in our favor. In summary, Bank bailouts, preferential treatment for elites at the expense of ordinary savers. Money printed for bailouts leads to inflation, which is a covert and silent tax. Our purchasing power decreases each time more money is printed. So if you think of it this way, there's a group of people which are unelected that have the power to print money out of thin air at will. Every time they do that, our purchasing power, everything that we've worked for, gets devalued. So they can print it for free out of thin air, but we have to work for it. Okay, that's unfair to start with. Not only that, it gets lent to us at interest, and that interest doesn't exist. Okay, and they benefit from that interest as well. So they have power to print money out of thin air at will, which we have to work for. And then when they lend it to us, they also benefit from us working more from the interest, which they add on top, which they don't need to do anything for that interest. It's making money from money. That's the swindle. Centralized control leads to corruption and monopoly power. This is the same with any institution, not just banking, but any institution. Centralized control leads to corruption and monopoly power, and we're seeing it firsthand. There's a risk of being debanked if you say the wrong thing. See Nigel Farage, 2023, loads of other people as well. You know, we're aware of the time we're living in at the minute. You become reliant upon third parties for all payments and transfers, i.e. if I want to send Mike £10 worth of whatever, pounds, I can't send it to him directly. I have to send it via a bank. So I have to be reliant upon a trusted third party to send it to him via bank transfer or PayPal or whatever. Another meme is a Matrix quote. You have to understand most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inured, so helplessly dependent on the system, they will fight to protect it. We'll have to bust this quote out if we get anybody defending inflation at the talk. Okay, this brings us to the next section, which is part 2. This is another saying, another meme: fix the money, fix the world. So do you want to take some of these slides, Mike, or should I crack on?
Nah, you got it.
Okay.
I could take it.
So here's it's up to you.
So 1971 is obviously when gold was unpegged from the dollar, and you can almost just see it almost instantaneously where it's affected so many more things. Where I think this is probably one of the most crazy charts of all of these ones, where the number of young adults living with parents is risen to levels higher than the Great Depression.
Yeah, so it's purely to the money.
We're supposedly in an era now of like abundance and AI and all this technological advancement. Yet everyone knows this. Everyone feels the pinch. Like I have cousins and stuff that are living, 18 to 29, still living with parents, have no intention of ever like moving out anytime soon, just because they literally can't. There's no way they'd be able to live. Next one.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's the social repercussions of this fiat currency. Median age of first marriage, so people aren't getting married as much, which also goes along with the next one, which I think is people aren't having babies as much because, again, there's a financial pinch on people. Can't afford to do it yet, Divorce prevalence by age, again, there's that 1971 number. So basically, like, the fabric of society itself in this fiat currency world is being just completely deracinated and just pure chaos since then. Children per woman, so birth rates are dropping. I know loads of people who say, well, can't afford to have a kid yet. There's no incentive to have a kid.
Or
what kind of world am I bringing the kid into?
Like 2 kids and they're like, I can't afford to have another one, even though they'd like to have 4 or something. But there's no... And society has normalized it as well. Society has normalized, like, you can't have more than 2 kids, everything, family holidays, family packages, going to the water park. A family is two parents, 2 kids. if you look at them everywhere. So it's so normalized now to
Yeah.
have to, because you can't fit in a taxi. That's another thing that a lot of people say. It's just
Yeah.
it's so normalized.
Again, 1971.
I remember learning at
This is
school.
world as well. This is
Yeah,
world. Like,
I remember
can
learning
you,
at school that China with the one child policy and stuff, and thinking that's crazy. But this is the mad thing, is that it's subtly happened
yeah.
everywhere across the Western world, but it's not. People are not throwing babies in bins or whatnot, like the crazy stories that were coming out from China. But
Yeah.
it's just societal norms and culture is almost just as powerful.
Yeah, I think there's other factors as well. But the money is a huge it's a foundational thing with this whole culture. You know, if the money is broken, the culture is naturally by default going to be broken as well, you know. Incarceration rate of inmates incarcerated under state and federal jurisdiction per 100,000, 1925, 2014. So where's 71? Again, 71 just blew up there. Even things like, you know, the amount of women that are having to resort to doing OnlyFans and shit, like, that's got to be a repercussion of fiat. Like, surely not all of those want to do that. Like, maybe a percentage of them might, but surely a lot of them think, well, I've got no other way to make this much money, so I'm going to have to.
Yeah, I remember seeing that on the news. A woman who was a teacher, and she got found out or something, like by her students, and she was on the news about it. And she was like, "But I get paid like 5 times the amount than I do as a
Yeah.
teacher." It's just like, I don't particularly want to do this, but it's like
Yeah.
I was struggling to feed my family. So
Yeah.
I'm a single parent.
What was her name? What was her name out of interest? For I'm just gonna for research purposes. What was the name of it? Yeah. So
I've got I don't know. And I understood what you were saying. But yeah,
anyway,
I remember seeing that chart though and being like, no, that can't be related. But it just sort of makes sense. If you are pushed to extremes, then
it has to be even crime rates, all kinds of stuff.
It's like if you can't make money, then if you can't feed yourself, you've got to find ways of making money, which is often criminal activity.
I mean, yeah, could be fraud. Fraud numbers, all kinds of stuff was going to have to go up. Here's an interesting one of global production of seed oil, so vegetable oil. So since 71, as I was saying earlier, when it's cheap to make seed oil, vegetable oil, this kind of thing. So they put it into the foods as a replacement of butter, a replacement of lard, because it was cheaper. So again, it was a way to hide inflation. And it's just absolutely exploded. And now you can barely find any product ever without any kind of seed oil in there. Obesity in children and adults 2 to 19-year-olds. So again, 1963, 0% obesity. Something's gone wrong. And there's 1971. Again, off the charts. And that's that really. Basically just making the point that the money is the foundation of a society. And when the money is messed up, then the society as a whole, it just becomes completely messed up as well. I promise we will get to Bitcoin soon. Right. What are we in? 40 minutes in, and we're at part 2. Okay, that'll do. So traditionally, this is about what makes a good money. So how has currency evolved over time? What constitutes a sound money? What doesn't? So traditionally, economists define money as needing 3 functions. Store of value, it needs to hold purchasing power over time. It's a medium of exchange. It's widely accepted for trade. And it needs to be a unit of account. So it's a common measure for pricing goods and services, i.e., how much is that? It's £10, that's £5, etc. But to achieve this, money must have key properties. 1, it must be durable. It must last over time. It must not spoil or degrade. For example, eggs, not very durable, so they haven't evolved to be money. or a medium of exchange. It must be portable, easy to transport across distances. It must be divisible and must be able to split it into smaller units for all sizes of trade. It must be fungible, so one unit must be the same and interchangeable with any other unit. It must be recognizable, and it must be verifiable, so you must be able to easily identify it as genuine. It must also be scarce, which is probably the most important characteristic. The supply must be limited, otherwise inflation destroys trust and purchasing power. So here is a chart which we'll go through quickly. Bitcoin is blocked out for now, but we'll just compare fiat to gold. Everybody knows gold as a store of value. So you've got the characteristics on the left. First one we'll go over is portable. So gold is extremely unportable or importable, whatever the word is. It's not portable. Whereas fiat is highly portable. So the reason why there was a gold standard in the first place is because of the portability of gold. So if I wanted to move from point A to B, go on a trip to a different country, taking gold would be highly inconvenient. So a paper IOU was created. So a bank would hold your gold, and that paper IOU was created, and it would be a direct one-to-one exchange where I could walk to a different town, different country, and exchange those paper notes for gold at that other bank. That was how paper money came into existence in the first place because of this issue. But as we've seen in that video earlier, now that link has been severed. The paper is no longer exchangeable for gold like it was. It wasn't pegged one-to-one.
Temporarily 55 years ago, it's been severed.
Yeah, it temporarily was severed 55 years ago. Yeah. And now we have to pay however many thousands of pounds it is for the same ounce of gold, which just shows how much the fiat has been devalued compared to gold. We'll quickly go over some of these. Scarce. So yeah, fiat is low on the scale. It's not scarce at all. It's just going to be printed and printed and printed forever, basically, until people lose faith in it and the currency collapses, which is inevitable from all paper fiat currencies. Might be 5 years, might be 50 years, 100 years, don't know, but it's inevitable that eventually it is going to go to zero. Gold is moderate, even though you can't just print more gold out of thin air. There is more of a supply coming into existence every year, about 2% inflation on gold. So every, I think, 50 or 60 years, the entire gold supply doubles. If there's a big demand for it, the price goes up, then mining companies will just go and mine more, pull it out of the ground, So it's not perfectly finite, but it is a scarce asset. Established history, high for gold. Yes, it's been around for thousands of years. Low for fiat. The fiat experiment has only really been around, as we're currently in, since 71. And then there's a few other things as well. We'll come back to that graph. Right then, so finally, what is Bitcoin? So we've explained the problem with the fiat currencies. So now we're on to the solution. Are you sharing screen now, Mike? You're muted.
Can you see that now?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So what is Bitcoin? So first of all, Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, which just basically means it's like me handing cash to Tom but doing that online, digitally, anywhere in the world. And did you know that Bitcoin was not the first cryptocurrency? It's often something that people throw around. Bitcoin is the first one. That's why it's valuable. Other attempts like B-Money and BitGold actually tried but failed before Bitcoin. And so this was a big aha moment for me. It was realizing that Bitcoin's 0 to 1 moment. So this is what actually Bitcoin is the first one to actually be able to do this, is that it prevents double spending without a central authority. So if I was to email you a picture, we would both own the picture. Whereas with money, it can't work that way. If I email you $20, I shouldn't still have the $20 because otherwise it defeats the point of money. And then I can double spend that $20 again. So this is what Bitcoin managed to do without a central authority.
It's always needed the third party.
Because today validate. Your digital payments work because the central authority, aka your bank, records all the transactions.
You've got it. You've got it. I'll be quiet.
So before we fully understand how Bitcoin solved that double spending problem, I'll use the laser pen here. We need to understand the next 5 concepts first. So the blockchain. Now, bear with me. I know some of these might sound technical, but I'll try and explain it in the way that it makes sense for me and use visuals to help as well. The way that I kind of got my head around this was just imagining like a magic notebook that everyone that bought this notebook or everyone that owned it all had exactly the same information in it. And when one notebook is updated, all the notebooks get updated. So this is how I kind of imagined it. The way it works is if someone tries to figure out the next page of the notebook, everyone else has to agree whether it's acceptable, what it is that they're putting in, and then everyone adds that together. Once something is added, no one central authority or person can decide to change that entry. So it just gets rejected by everyone else and it doesn't count. Another thing to really get your head around is that the blockchain is sometimes called the time chain, which was originally written in the white paper. But the reason it's called the time chain is because every 10 minutes, a new page is added. And so once that page is added, if the page gets added quicker than 10 minutes, then that means that the problem will get harder to make it always try and balance back to 10 minutes and vice versa. So if it gets added slower than 10 minutes, the problem will become easier. To try, if you go over a long enough patch of time, the average should be 10 minutes per new page that's added. The point of
basically it's automatically adjusting, basically, depending on certain things.
The whole point of the blockchain or the time chain is that there is no need for a middleman. So it completely removes the need of having a bank that holds the ledger and records all these transactions. And to fully get your head around this, we need to understand mining. And so the first time I heard about mining, this is literally what I imagined. I imagined a little digital man trying to dig for gold or Bitcoin in this case. But what mining really is just a bunch of computers. And you may hear that miners are solving complex math problems. I heard that so many times, and that never really helped me understand what was going on. It sounds confusing and isn't really that accurate as what's actually happening. Mining is more like a global lottery, but instead of buying tickets, you buy electricity, which then make trillions of guesses every second. Just to put this in context as well, I heard recently that it's more, if you imagine all the grains of sand on Earth, these computers are making more guesses than grains of sand on Earth every second. So it's an insane amount of guesses that they are making. So they're trying to crack a really hard combo lock by feeding 3 things into Bitcoin's cryptographic function. And this is called SHA-256. We don't need to understand all the technicality, jargon doesn't really matter here. We're just trying to get a quick overview of how it works so you can see why it is secure and why it is actually working.
For the noobs that are watching as well, this is where the term cryptocurrency comes from. It's from cryptographic. It's about using this cryptographic code, cryptographic function. And the one that Bitcoin uses is the same that nuclear launch codes use. Like this is the level of security on Bitcoin.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to go down a whole rabbit hole of like how Bitcoin came about, because obviously if they're using it, surely it's come from that. But anyway, that's beyond the scope. I probably won't say that tomorrow. The 3 things that needs to get fed in anyway is the previous block, which includes all previous transactions. So if you remember the notebook, that includes all pages that have ever existed in the notebook. Secondly, it's all new transactions. So within the last 10 minutes, everyone who's made any transactions, so if I've sent some Bitcoin to Tom in the last 10 minutes, that needs to go in this next block as well. And then third, there's like a random number, which is random. And so this is the random lottery ticket style. This is a big part of how that's worked out.
So a block, sorry to interrupt again, but a block is basically just a big bundle of the current transactions waiting to be confirmed. A block is basically a page in that notepad, as you say.
And also it doesn't look as clean as this. This is, it's all cryptographically put together, and it would just be a load of code and things.
Yeah.
But just for us to get our head around, this helped me get my head around it anyway. So hopefully that will help for other people as well. And what that does is it creates the 64 character code, which is called a hash. If you can only win it if it has enough zeros at the start. So if you remember earlier talking about the time chain and how it gets easier and harder, if it takes less than 10 minutes to mine, the way that it gets harder is by requiring more zeros at the start. That's harder to find because every time that you change a function in here, it completely changes the whole hash. So it's very, very hard to find more zeros at the start. And then vice versa. If it takes more than 10 minutes to mine, it needs to get easier, so it requires fewer zeros at the start. And what this has done is it's actually driven like innovative approaches to making renewable energy, because at the moment, renewable energy is one of the cheapest forms of energy, and there is a massive incentive for someone to find the next block, as we're about to see. There's two main rewards for anyone that finds a block. There are fees and there are the subsidy. So the fees will be, if I've sent some Bitcoin to Tom, I would pay a small fee, and everyone that sends a transaction would. So this is what the miner of that next block will receive. There's also the subsidy, which at the minute is 3.125 Bitcoin. And just to put that in context, if Bitcoin's around $100,000, which is roughly where it is today, that's about $300,000 that someone is going to receive for every block. And just again, to put that back into the real world, just this time that we've been speaking on here, what's that now? About 50 minutes?
50.
That's $1.5 million that different miners have won just in this time that we have been talking about this. So that's why there's an incentive to find this.
This is where the new Bitcoin comes from, is from this block reward. So if you're one of the miners, one of the computers, which has contributed your computer and your energy, your electricity to solving these problems, if yours is the one that cracks the code, so to speak, you get that reward of brand new Bitcoin, and you also get the transaction fees as well. But as the more computers that are on the network, the more secure it is as well, which I think you get to anyway. That makes sense.
So why does this matter? We've basically created something digital that requires real world resources to produce electricity. And this is why it's called proof of work. But I know what you're probably still thinking, because I thought this for years. It's still a massive waste though, isn't it? You're just wasting all this energy. And this is where I already alluded to, the use of sustainable energy sources for Bitcoin has grown to over 50% now. And this is, you can see this is from April 2025. The last sort of legit study before this, I think, was in 2022 or 23, and I think it was about 35%. So you can see the radical speed of renewable energy that is being produced, or like that is mining Bitcoin. And a lot of this as well is just stranded energy. So it's not actually getting used, because in a lot of solar panel batteries that store the energy, if they get full, it actually becomes unstable. So it's not like they can just keep filling it up in the battery. You just have to waste it, get rid of it. You have to or turn off the energy So that's where a lot of this energy is coming from. It's literally not a waste. And
Yeah. Or it was being wasted anyway, like flared gas
it was
and stuff.
being wasted anyway. Yeah. Yeah. They were turning. If ever you, oh, this is a interesting fact. If ever you've seen, or like put your hand up if you've ever seen a wind turbine not going round. I used to think that was because there wasn't much wind, but that is actually because the batteries are full and they've turned off the wind turbines. So next time you see a wind turbine not going around, just think that could be mining Bitcoin for literally no expendable energy at all. Like there's no waste involved in that at all. And then also there is actually also cleaning up the environment, which no one would believe if you listen to most mainstream media. But I found some articles from mainstream media or peer-reviewed journals where it shows that methane, which is released from cow poo, also in landfill gas, and all in the oil industry, that is being used to create energy to mine Bitcoin. So it's actually helping to clean up this waste gas that is being released. The next question that I had was that if it is digital, can't it just be hacked? And this is where we need to understand decentralization. And the main way that Bitcoin is decentralized is through what are called nodes, which are just computers that are checking that everyone is following the rules. That's all that a node is. It's like a referee. And anyone can download this software from any computer. Currently, there's thought to be over 100,000 nodes in the world. This one that I've pulled up here is for public nodes. And you can see how, the reason I use this one is because you can see how scattered around the world they are. There's not just like one central place where they are. And this is why it is decentralized. All of these would have to be shut off at the same time for a prolonged period of time for anything to happen with Bitcoin.
I'm just thinking in terms of node. Could you make the analogy that, like, say you've got a bank branch, each branch which is on the high street, could that be a node of the central bank? Does that make sense? Like, that's where you go and do your transactions. That's where you can send money, you can deposit money. Like, if you imagine it as like each one of those is a branch, but you can have your own node. You can be your own bank. Yeah. You can send your own transactions. You can validate your own transactions. Or if you don't want to run your own node, you can use somebody else. Like, it's each one of those is running the actual software itself. So I can send money to Mike directly via my node to him, to his node, and it will be completely peer-to-peer. Maybe that's a bit too deep for them. I don't know.
Yeah. No, but yeah, that is quite good.
So it's almost like
the only other thing though is that it literally is an enforcer of the rules as well. So a bank branch,
it's an enforcer of policy. Yeah. It'd be like if you want to change bank policy, if you want to change the policy, you're going to have to shut down the 24,000 nodes or come up with 25,000 nodes at least that have a different policy.
Yeah, but I mean, this is where it gets really deep because it's not as simple as the number of nodes, because otherwise it would just be really simple for a bad actor to literally whip up 25,000 or 100, whip up 2 million nodes. Like anyone could do that. What's important is the economic nodes, which is basically how much money is moving through, how much Bitcoin is moving through.
Maybe we won't mention that bit then. It'd be too complex.
It starts getting deep, doesn't it?
That's fine. Yeah. Maybe a Q&A at the end. Yeah.
And then the reason that don't trust, verify comes up so much in Bitcoin is because it's incredibly, just like a Sudoku. If anyone's ever done a Sudoku, it's hard to actually complete a Sudoku. It will take you, half an hour to an hour or more. Whereas once you've got the answers, you can verify it quite quickly. You can go through each row, make sure there's only one number in each row. You can see if it's correct or not. It's the same with Bitcoin. So the mining, like I was saying, it takes trillions of guesses to mine one Bitcoin. But then once it has been mined, once I have the answer, I can just quickly reverse engineer it through the program SHA-256, and I can validate myself. I can verify myself whether it is a winning number or not. And this is what your node will be doing. And this is why it's so decentralized.
So once that block of transactions has been verified, you can then go and check yourself. Okay, yes, my payment has been verified on the blockchain. My payment's gone to Mike, has gone through. You don't have to trust Mike. You don't have to trust a third party. You can check it yourself. You can verify it yourself on the network, which has been verified with the 25,000 plus nodes, that it's legitimate, it's not counterfeit, and that this transaction has gone through. Like, I don't have that Bitcoin anymore. It's now in Mike's, wallet.
That's one of the huge things. All of this is publicly available. So it's not like relying on your bank to tell you what has and hasn't been done. You can go and check it yourself, like on the actual network. And then also another reason it's so decentralized is because no miner can cheat or hack the system, because their block won't count. So they'll end up wasting money on electricity. So the real incentive for miners is to not cheat or hack the system, because there's no incentive to do that because they won't receive the block. And that means that they'll waste thousands of dollars on electricity and have nothing to show for it. So that is another reason why it's so decentralized. And then the last point on decentralization is the immaculate conception. Satoshi Nakamoto has disappeared and nodes are the auditor now. So there's no one central authority. There's no one owner who can change the rules tomorrow. Like, it is literally, it's up to all the nodes on what does and does not get accepted. As long as all the nodes are following the same rules, there is nothing any one individual can do.
It's out there. It's running.
It is.
It's unstoppable.
So the next thing that put me off for quite a while is that it's so volatile. And how can it be a store of value if it goes up and down as much as it does? And this is where we need to understand scarcity. So there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And you can actually see this for yourself in the code. Like I said, it's all publicly available. It's not just guesswork. It's not just relying on what someone else is saying. Again, like, I don't code at all. I'm not a coder, but I've learned enough about it to be able to go and find this sort of stuff so I can verify it myself. It's not hard. It's just a website. And so what are we on? Scarcity. So rewards cut in half every 4 years until 2140, when all Bitcoin will be mined. And so that is why there will only ever be 21 million. It was figured out in 2009 in the white paper. It was decided the schedule for how much Bitcoin will be released. So at the moment, like I mentioned earlier, we're at 3.125 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The reason this is important...
But go back on that one, Mike, sorry, real quick. Just compare this to like gold, for example, where, let's say the price goes up and there's more demand for gold. You could technically just go and mine some more and increase the supply whenever you want. And then fiat is just increased whenever the banks want to print more money.
When anyone takes a loan out, fiat is increased.
Exactly. Yeah. Compare it to this, where no matter what the demand is, the supply is fixed in, it's locked. Nobody can change that supply schedule at all. Like, this is the next 100 years of supply. We know what it's going to be. There's never been a money quite like it.
And this chart is exactly the reason why this is so important, because gold, which has been the rarest form of money for thousands of years, will double in supply in the next 60 years. It's roughly sometime in 50, 60 years. It's around 2% that it goes up each year. Bitcoin already, if it stayed at its current supply rate, schedule of 3.125 every 10 minutes, it would then double in over 100 years. But you can see then it's going to halve. So it will be twice as long and halve every 4 years. And it's never going to double again. So it's, as Tom just said, it is the rarest form of money that has ever existed.
It's the first completely finite form.
It is.
Ever. Like, It just so happens that, like, technology has got to a certain point where we can have this perfectly finite, scarce form of digital currency for the first time in humanity's existence,
From my
which solves
research,
all these
that one of the
problems.
only other limited resources in the world is helium. Everything else can be like found or mined or discovered, but obviously you can't carry around helium in gas bottles and go and exchange that. You
Yeah,
can't exchange that on the internet. So it's like this is the next
yeah.
most scarce thing, other than maybe human time. But again, that's hard to sell. So how can everyone use it if only 21 million Bitcoin exists? This was my next thought when I figured this out. I was like, yeah, but how are we all going to use that? That doesn't make any sense. Like, it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to use that as money. But one Bitcoin can be split into 100 million Satoshis. Just like a pizza, what if you have one pizza, it doesn't mean only one person can eat it. You can slice up the pizza just the same way with Bitcoin. And so that means there's going to be 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. And then just to put this into context, in the world at the moment, there's roughly $1,000 trillion floating around in different asset classes. So Bitcoin with 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis can quite easily be able to be used by everyone throughout the world. My next question was, how do you know that 21 million will never change? How do you know that is going to be the number? And that is because you need such a large consensus to change any rules on Bitcoin. This is it's hard to say this bit without getting too technical, isn't it? So this was a fork.
Yeah, it was a rule. Just say it was a rule change.
So this was a rule change in 2017, and you can see it needed over 95% of people, so that's nodes, miners, users, businesses, to agree that this new rule change was acceptable. Anytime that there is not this big consensus, it creates something called a fork or a hard fork. And so there have been numerous times throughout Bitcoin's history where someone decides that they want to change one of the rules. And when there is not this consensus, it just creates a whole new chain.
It's like a schism between it creates two.
Yeah. So you get two chains. And how you say, well, how do you know which one's the real Bitcoin? The easiest way to tell is by looking at how much it is worth. And so you can see with Bitcoin Cash, which is exactly this fork here in 2017, it is now worth $9.26 billion market cap, whereas Bitcoin has over a $2 trillion market cap. So people literally vote with their money, which is the Bitcoin, the real Bitcoin. And more importantly, no one would agree to make their own money worth less, which actually happens to our currency every day. But if you had £100,000 in Bitcoin with a 21 million supply, if you or someone wanted to change it to 210 million supply, that means that you would now only have £10,000, and no one's going to agree to that. So let alone get a 95% consensus. So how do you own something that doesn't physically exist? Once I understood all of this, everything that I've explained so far, this was my next question. And that is through digital signatures. So you own access, which is called a private key, that proves you control those Bitcoin. And this is now typically shown with a 12 or 24 word seed phrase. And this is your private key. This basically means that Bitcoin is a bearer asset, which just means possession equals ownership. And it's very similar to physical gold or physical cash. If I have $50 in my dollars, if I have £50 in my wallet, so used to saying dollars now. If I have £50 in my wallet and I leave that on the side and I go to the toilet, I come back and the £50 is gone, I do not own that £50 anymore. It is very similar with Bitcoin.
It's like gold is the bearer asset. Basically, that's where the value is, and that, as we said earlier, that IOU, that paper money, which was printed as an IOU for that gold, was an IOU for the bearer asset. So you could travel with the IOU, but then you went and picked the bearer asset up from a different bank. Or there was a telephone line and the ledger would change between banks. You say, right, I'm taking 10,000 out of this bank and I'm going to add it into this bank. So the bearer asset was basically the hard gold in the bank. Well, Bitcoin is the first bearer asset which can now be transferred over that telegraph pole, instantaneously. Like you're the holder of that digital gold. It's like a digital bearer asset. So there's no need for the paper IOU on top because Bitcoin is that. Does that make sense?
Yep. Whoever owns the keys owns the coins. It's pretty much as simple as that. So exactly. Do not lose those keys. No one can freeze it, seize it, or block transactions, just in the way that the truth is out. Money is just an IOU and the banks are rolling in it. So banks can do any of those things. They can freeze it, they can seize it, and they can block transactions. With Bitcoin, that is not possible. If you own the Bitcoin and you don't even need to run it through your own node, but if you own your Bitcoin and you spend it, there is nothing that anyone can do to stop
it. There's no CEO, there's no central office that can be called to say, oh, can you cancel this transaction because this person's been posted on Facebook. There's none of that. It's just a huge, secure, decentralized network where you can hold your own coins. You don't need to ask permission to anybody. That's that.
So remember the problem. How do you solve the double spending problem without a central authority? Now we understand these 5 concepts, I'll try and explain. The digital signatures, or your private keys, prove that you own access to those coins. So then you use the blockchain to spend those Bitcoin or move those Bitcoin wherever that you want. The nodes, decentralized nodes, check to make sure that those transactions are accurate or using the rules. The miners then help to secure the network and make sure that, and then actually put those transactions into a block for you. And then the scarcity means that no one can print more of it whenever they want. So that is how the double spending problem has been solved without one central authority. These are just some other questions that I then mulled over, and these were probably like some of the main ones that I get all the time. So does it have intrinsic value like gold? First of all, the word intrinsic is subjective. For example, if I have some memories and photos on my phone, those pictures are intrinsically valuable to me, whereas they might not be to someone else. So it's very important to distinguish that, first of all. But also gold has less than 10% of its use used in industrial uses. The rest is just monetary properties. So you can see here, jewelry, bullion, coins and medals, that makes up the vast majority of gold, which is not actually being used physically for electronics or in industries in any way. The rest of gold's use case, like the value of gold, comes from its monetary uses. And as you can see, Bitcoin pretty much blows gold and fiat out of the water. The only two that it doesn't beat gold with is the established history, and in this case, durability. But I'd argue that's only really because of the established history. It has been for its whole time that it has been existed, which it's 16, 17 years. It has proven to be very, very durable. Secondly, can it be a store of value dropping 80%? And I kind of alluded to this earlier about the scarcity, but also early adoption of any new technology is very volatile. So this is Amazon in the dot-com bubble dropping by 95%. Whereas when you look at it now, you can't even tell what that is on this chart. That is the same part of that chart. And the volatility has reduced over time. The drops are not as big. You can see this as well with Bitcoin. Like I said, everything is publicly available. You can check this information out yourself, but you can see the volatility has reduced over time. And whenever you are in doubt, it's always best to zoom out. So checking the 4-year average rather than the daily Bitcoin price, you can see it's actually not so volatile. But when you're checking the price every day, it does look really, really crazy and scary, and makes you think, how is anyone ever going to use this? But over time, slowly, it's just going slowly in one direction, and there's not any huge volatility. But here is the big question that I get all the time, and it's the one that probably stopped me having any conviction in this for the longest period of time. Why won't someone just create a better Bitcoin? The reason is because Bitcoin is a protocol, not some technology. And we see protocols so rarely and technology so often that it makes it really, really hard for us to understand this at all. But this is kind of what clicked for me. Protocols are built in layers. They are not ready for everyone at first. So, for example, the internet was a protocol. The DARPA APRANET in the late 60s was the internet. They were the rules for the internet. But it wasn't until the infrastructure, so things like cables under the sea, data centers, and then additional layers such as TCP/IP and HTTP, which basically meant that HTTP just was the website that you type in, like www.google.com. That did not exist before 1991. It wasn't easy for normal people like you and me to go and use the internet before the 90s, which is why the 90s and the dot-com bubble kind of happened. That's where the internet really first started happening, although it existed from the 60s. And
the protocol, sorry to interrupt, the protocol is just a set of rules, is that right? That's a set of rules that the computers on the network decide upon. Yeah, we're going to follow these rules, and from that protocol, then things can be built on top of that. Bitcoin is like that.
If you're not following the rules, you're not on Bitcoin. The same way that if I don't have a computer plugged into the internet and type in a specific thing on a browser, I'm not on the internet. You're either on the internet or you're not. You're either on Bitcoin or you're not. You can't be slightly on Bitcoin. You can't be slightly on the internet. You're either using it or not. But it's often that applications, things like email, social media, apps on your phone, apps on your laptop, that make it so accessible to everyday people. And these are sort of the additional layers built on top of layers sort of thing. Bitcoin has done exactly the same thing. The white paper in 2008, the infrastructure. Is it 2008 or 2009?
White paper was 2008, but it went online 2009.
Yeah, it was January 2009, wasn't it, that it started? So then the infrastructure, so that's the things like the miners and the nodes, which I'm going to get to in a second, and additional layers on top of it. So things like the Lightning Network, which make transactions quicker to do. Then also there's applications to things like Nostr, Fediment, where Nostr is a decentralized social media platform, which is this at the minute it's mainly as a social media platform.
You probably lose people at this point.
Yeah, maybe should I just not even say that?
Just say, there are layers.
It's an easy way for people to tweet and get zapped Bitcoin sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just say something like that. But this is probably the bigger part. That this was the penny drop moment for me. I still didn't even understand in this whole layers thing. Still didn't really understand it. It was understanding that the infrastructure for Bitcoin only works for Bitcoin, just like cables for the internet. So all of these miners, all of these computers that are all around the world, all the nodes that are running the software, they only work for Bitcoin. Like these miners cannot just reprogram and plug into another altcoin of some sort. It will only work on Bitcoin's rules. And this is, again, why it's so hard to change Bitcoin's rules, and it's why it's so secure. This here shows the hash rate, which is basically how many, the computing power that is secure in the network. All of these miners is kind of just showing the miners that are plugged in. And even when there are huge crashes, so this is 2021 to 22, and it was about a 75% crash during this time. but the miners increased by 60% during that time. And then when Bitcoin's going up, they increase even more. So it's one of those things where I'd argue this is arguably a more important chart to be looking at or paying attention to than Bitcoin's price. For me, anyway.
So with this hash rate, which, as you said, is the total processing power going into the network collectively, you were saying earlier that every 10 minutes this new block is found, and then if more miners enter and the hash rate increases, that's going to make the block be found a lot easier and quicker. And then the actual software itself automatically adjusts to find its heartbeat again every 10 minutes. So it will make the difficulty harder. So it will still find it every 10 minutes. Or if this hash rate drops, let's say like when China banned Bitcoin mining temporarily, whenever that was, the hash rate dropped, then the software automatically made it a lot easier to find the puzzle piece, so to speak, to find a block. So then what happens is that even the average Joe like me and you can then start mining at home because it's easier to mine and find these blocks. So we're incentivized to join the network. And when we're incentivized to join the network, the hash rate will increase. So automatically there's an incentive to find this equilibrium, this heartbeat, whether it's dropping or increasing.
That's it.
So it's like an anti-fragile network, which is just out there and running, and it's just weathering the storm no matter what happens.
Again, why it's called a time chain. If you go over a long enough period of time, you can be relatively sure on average it'll be 10 minutes between each block. So if you work out how many blocks there are, you can kind of work out what the time is or the year or the date, which is why those halvings are roughly every 4 years. And then finally, the last bit that kind of tied all this together for me was that protocols are winner take all. So technology is winner take most. So things like Apple and Samsung can both compete at the same time. Things like Uber and Lyft can both compete. This does say Meta and Insta. I know Insta's kind of in Meta anyway now, but it's technologies can both compete and the winner will take most. Protocols are just winner take all. There's only one internet, there's only one electricity system, there's only one telephone line system, and there's very likely to only be one money system, whether it's Bitcoin or not. No, I probably shouldn't say that. Just there's only going to be one money protocol.
Yeah, don't say that. But I mean, it's not. This is going to solidify the point why there is no second best and why it's Bitcoin, not crypto.
Yeah.
This is like, well, if it's a protocol and the winner takes all, it ain't going to be Dogecoin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It ain't going to be whatever.
Yeah. I like it if someone in the audience asks something more.
Well, we could say, but also then we can say, well,
now.
Look at the hash rate. Like,
exactly.
what gives it its value is it's because decentralized, it's secure. What's it secured by? The hash rate. Well, there's nothing that even comes close.
Yeah.
Like, we'd say that the current hash rate is the largest, most powerful distributed computer network on Earth. Like, there is no even. It's the equivalent of like 7 or 8 nuclear power plants put together. Like, that's the hash rate of the Bitcoin network. That's how secure it is, right? And it's decentralized. As you said, there's over 100,000 nodes running it. There's nothing comes close to this in terms of decentralization and security.
It's approximately 10,000 times more powerful than all major cloud providers combined. Bitcoin is 500 plus times more powerful than the world's most powerful supercomputer. It would take the entire world's population 2,000 years to match Bitcoin's computing power at 1 hash per person per second. It's just numbers that we can't even comprehend.
Yeah, you can't comprehend it. Yeah.
So it's just, I think that's the bit that makes it so hard to understand. Yeah. But if you remove any one of these, and Bitcoin doesn't work. If you remove the double spending problem, it's not money because you can just keep spending it. You remove the blockchain, you're just back to trusting banks. Remove the mining, there is no security. Remove decentralization and the nodes, the rules can change at any time. If you remove the scarcity, it just becomes a printable fiat currency. And if you remove digital signatures, there's no true ownership. And then the final question, are we too late? And if you see on here, Bitcoin has around a 2 trillion market cap, and there are roughly 900 to 1,000 trillion dollars floating around in the world. And just to try and put this in perspective as well, roughly half of the world is just looking for a long-term store of value. So if you go back here, if you look at property, if there's 330 trillion in property, roughly half of that, all that money is doing is just trying to preserve their purchasing power. They're not people that need the utility of a house over their head. And so Bitcoin is just trying to be the best store of value that we've ever had. It's a digitally engineered version of the best store of value that human beings could have.
They can't be printed by anyone. Over to me.
Yeah.
Well, who here's seen this film, The Matrix, the best film of all time? We've got the red pill, we've got the blue pill. With this, we've got, instead of the red pill, we've got the orange pill. So just click that next for me, Mike. You're at a crossroads. You take the blue pill. You wake up tomorrow exactly where you were, believing that inflation is normal, trusting that 2 to 10% annual loss of purchasing power is healthy, accepting that your wages never keep up, watching your savings melt while asset prices explode, living in a system where debt is rewarded and saving is punished, hoping the people who print the money know what they're doing, believing that money created from nothing still has value, working harder every year for less time, less freedom, and less future, and believing this is just the way things are and nothing ever changes. Or you take the red pill, which in this case is the orange, the Bitcoin pill. You open your eyes to a different world. You open your eyes to money that cannot be printed, diluted, or debased, that has a fixed supply you can verify, not trust, savings that get stronger, not weaker, owning your time, energy, and future outright, a system where you are your own bank, a global borderless payment system without permission, a network secured by mathematics, not politicians, a monetary foundation based on rules, not rulers, and a path to sovereignty, stability, and long-term freedom. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Next. There we go. That's the end of the prez.
That's it.
This will be when there'll be loads of round of applause. Ladies start throwing bras at us, like roses. Roses will be coming up there, everything like that.
You've been on the music industry too long, man.
Right then, so this will be the end. We'll have a little chill, little coffee break, and then we'll do some Q&A because I'm sure some people have got some questions. And by this point, we'll probably have about an hour left, which will be good. If you want some further learning, further resources, here's some books that we recommend, and we'll be able to tell you what they are if you're interested. Or we've got some QR codes. At the top, you've got a video that Mike did, which is 2 hours long, basically going in depth. What is Bitcoin? Then bottom is my YouTube channel, which is mostly just me waffling while I walk the dog, talking about Bitcoin. And the middle one is a podcast that we have together, which is where we talk and basically discuss the Bitcoin Standard book, which is on our recommended reading list. And is there any slides after that?
I think that's it.
I don't think there is there?
That's it.
We'll leave that. That's it.
That is it.
Boom.
Yeah, I think it probably just, what's that, an hour and a half?
Hour and a half, yeah. That's locked in. It's locked into an hour and a half, I think. That's pretty.
Typically, when you're doing it live, you go over that.
Yeah.
So
really?
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends, like, if you just start rushing through it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there will be an hour, but I think we do probably need to try and get through it. You know, like, I don't know. It's so hard, isn't it? I don't know if there's anything in there you can cut.
Shall I stop the recording now and then we'll have a debrief?
Let's do that.
Right, and cheers for watching. If you're still watching at this stage, see you later.